Make this chili with these dry beans in 30 minutes plus 30 seconds, even if you don't have a pressure cooker. I'll be back to explain. Hey people in the winterwebs, I'm Mr. Spork and these are Mr. Spork's hands. I was out at the farm today filming some other stuff for you guys, and I realized, hey, first week of December, it's awfully darn chilly out here, which made me think, why don't I make some chili for you good folks? I looked at a bazillion 30-minute chili recipes online, and you know, every single one of them reached for a can of beans, and I think that is a shame, because the way to do it is to use dry beans. Not only do you get a better texture, but you get 5 times the beans for the same amount of money. All you got to do the night before you want to make chili is the following. Take some beans, pour some into a bowl. That's, I don't know, 1.5 cups, maybe 300 grams. Take some water, plain old regular tap water, not even hot. Cover those beans all the way with water. Go to bed. I'll see you in 8 hours. So here we are 8 hours later with my helpers. And I say 8 hours, it can be up to 24 hours if you decide you want to do something different for dinner within 24 hours. All you got to do is drain them, rinse them a couple times, and put them like this, not covered in water, in your fridge. They'll keep this way in the soaked but not yet cooked stage, as long as the cats don't get to them. They'll keep like this for up to 3 days. So you got plenty of time to work beans into your schedule. Let's get ready to make some chili. Okay, the first thing to do to make chili is to get the beans cooking. I feel comfortable calling this a 30-minute chili because 30 minutes is how long it takes to cook the beans. Everything else we're going to do while they cook. So those soaked beans, water to cover. I'm going to give them a really good dose of salt. Don't worry too much about the extra salt in there because we're going to drain that cooking water off. All that salt isn't going to make it into your final chili. This goes on to the hob for 30 minutes. Bring them up to a boil on high heat and then drop them down to a medium to simmer for that full 30 minutes. One of the advantages of cooking your beans separately rather than with the rest of your chili ingredients is that you can get the texture just the way you want it, a little firmer, a little softer, and you can get that salt and seasoning into them properly without totally over-salting your actual chili. Speaking of texture, you'll notice I've got the Instant Pot out. I'm not using the Instant Pot as a pressure cooker today. I have never once gotten better beans by pressure cooking, especially pressure cooking from dry beans, than I have with the slow cold soak that the beans really need, and then just simmering them for 30 minutes on top of the stove. You know, if you consider the heat up time and the warm up time on the pressure cookers anyway, it's just as fast to cook them on the stovetop. Speaking of texture, you never want to add acids into beans that are cooking because that will make them tough. So another reason not to cook your beans in the chili, cook them separately and add them at the end. The tomatoes, I'm going to use a combination today of fresh because I had some that are kind of at the end of their life, perfect for making chili, and some canned. I've always had the best luck with whole tomatoes in the can, and I've tried every single one that I can get at my local market, and I encourage you to do the same taste test because, oddly enough, price doesn't really seem to be a guiding factor for quality of tomatoes. I've tried the generic, an actual San Marzano PDO designation with the whole serial number and everything. I've tried them all. They all have their places. These are great for making pizza sauce, by the way. But for a chili, most of them will work fine, but do get the whole version rather than the crushed or the sauce or the diced, and crush them up yourself. I just get better flavor that way. Let's talk about my Super Magic Everything Chili Mix. That's chili, C-H-I-L-I, not pure chili, C-H-I-L-E. I keep this mixed up for everything from tacos to fajitas to flank steak on the grill, and of course for making chili. The idea is that you make a base and then you add the chilies to suit your preference. It does not have to be blazing hot. It does not have to be super mild. It's down to your preference, and there's no real exact science, so don't worry too much about the measurements. I use about 3 parts of a good sweet paprika. I like Hungarian. That's a good base. I add just a tiny little bit, maybe a quarter part of brown mustard. Brown mustard is an emulsifier, so it'll help bring things together, especially if you're doing things like tacos. I use whole black peppercorns, whole cumin, maybe a part each of those to the 3 parts of paprika. I use a little bit of garlic granules. Even if I'm going to use fresh, the garlic has a stronger flavor, so I put in about a half a part there. And then I got to bring the heat. The heat can be something clean like a cayenne or an Indian red chili flake. Those work really, really well. I also grow these little chili piquins and dry them myself. They're really nice, but kind of blazing hot. And if you want something mild, you can actually go and grab some of these Korean chili flakes. They're really mild in the grand scheme of things, and they work really well. A little bit of a sweetness there. Sometimes I use all of them. And if I get really crazy, I want to put in a little bit of smoke flavor, I go grab some smoked paprika, pimenton. The idea, though, is don't use too much of this stuff, because you can make it too smoky, believe it or not. I would use 2 to 3 parts of paprika, maybe a quarter part, half a part at most of the smoked paprika. That's how you make the super magic spice blend that I'm going to use just in a second. I want to emphasize that you could cook this chili in any kind of pot that you got. I happen to be doing it in the Instant Pot today just because it's basically a burner with a timer on it. You could do it in a cast iron Dutch oven. I like these a lot because they hold the heat really well. And you can take the whole thing and shove it in the oven to finish cooking it if that's your preference. So don't worry about what kind of pot you got. Any will work. The rest of the ingredients you've got already in your pantry, I suspect. We've got some mushrooms. I've mentioned the tomatoes earlier. Got some beef and chicken stock. You don't have to use stock. You could use water. You could use vegetable stock, anything that you've got. I've got a little bit of chipotle chili. This is the chipotle chili in adobo sauce. One of those will add just a little bit of smokiness, which I like. Got some fresh chilies. My spice blend, of course. A little bit of garlic, a little bit of carrot, a little bit of celery, and freshly ground. I always grind my own. Take a look at this, because that way I know it came from a single cut of meat. And that's what I want to get started for you first into the Instant Pot. I got to figure out how to turn this silly thing on. Let's go to saute and start. Oh, that noise. A little bit of oil just to get it started, because this is pretty lean pork. It's not going to render off a lot of fat, and I don't want anything to stick. Any oil will do. I just happen to have olive oil in front of me. And I'm going to take this probably 300 grams of pork. I don't use a lot of pork because I'm going to bulk that pork out with these mushrooms. I'll show you those in just a second. So let's get this frying, and I'm going to go prep the rest of this stuff real fast so you don't have to watch me chop yet another carrot. So it looks like I've got about 18 minutes left on my beans cooking. This is an important step. I'm going to take some more oil into that browned pork, and I want to make sure that my spice mix, I'm going to do, I don't know, maybe 2 tablespoons. I want to make sure that that spice mix gets in contact with that oil. That oil will bloom the volatile oils, the flavors, in those spices. Make sure you do that step. I'm going to get everything else ready for the pot. Those spices are nice and fragrant now after about 60 seconds. I'm going to take my one lone chipotle. I'm going to chop that down, go straight into the pot. These little leathery chilies can be kind of tough, so I actually go ahead and chop them by hand. The food processor sometimes just spins them around on top without really doing anything. So let's get those. And I'm going to cheat with the rest. The rest I'm going to do the garlic and the chilies first. Give them a quick whir. Could you do all this by hand? Of course you could. I'm just cheating a little bit. But the food processor makes quick work of it all. The celery and carrot next. And finally the mushrooms. And the mushrooms I'm going to go in little pulses. I don't want to turn them into a mush, but I do want them pretty darn fine. I counted for you, that was 6 pulses in my monster food processor. All of that goes into there. Last but not least, I'm going to give my tomatoes a quick spin. These are the fresh tomatoes. It's getting easier as we go along. That was only 3 pulses on the tomatoes. Before I put the tomatoes in there, I want to deglaze the bottom of the pan, all those little burny bits, just a little bit of your stock. Once that's deglazed properly, in go the fresh tomatoes. And today, because I got them, I'm going to put in some of my canned tomatoes, the catsup, and again, a little bit more stock for now. We're going to add the rest of that stock in when we add the beans, which, according to my timer, have 8 minutes left on the beans. I left them out of the lineup earlier, but you do want to get a couple good onions in there, yellow, white, sweet, whatever you got. And remember, you don't have to have a food processor. I, in fact, do my onions by hand because I like a little bit of a chunkier onion in there. So I use my magic knife and get nice big chunky onions in the mix. My timer went ding on the beans after 30 minutes. They are ready to go. You can check the tenderness towards the end of cooking. Always go at least 30 minutes, but anywhere between 30 and 40 minutes, you're probably in good shape. Make sure you drain them completely of that salty cooking water and into the pot they go. And then I want just enough liquid to cover them. So the rest of that chicken stock I had laying around, and because I need to use it up, a little bit of beef stock, and we are there. Now, of course, whenever I make chili, I always do a quick dive into the freezer to see if there's anything that I think might need to get used up and might go in there pretty well. And I'm sure some of the chili purists are going to scream and yell and holler because I'm going to put some frozen corn in, but you know what? I needed to use it up, so you could eat this chili right now. Everything's been cooked separately. The beans are nice and tender. We cut the carrot and the celery really fine. They've all had some saute time. It's edible right now, but the more time you give it just simmering away, whether you do it in something like this Instant Pot, whether you do it in a cast iron Dutch oven on the stovetop or in the oven, you could throw it into a slow cooker, whatever you want. Give it some more time. It's going to get deeper and richer, but if you're hungry, go ahead and have a bowl right now. I hope you make a vat of this for a cold winter's day. You can see how easy it is to throw together. Anybody could do this. As long as you think the night ahead and just cover some dry beans in water, you're off to the races. It's a great value. I think this whole vat of probably 5 or 6 liters probably cost me less than $6. That's a good value, especially compared to the nasty ready-made cans of chili. Please don't buy those. Those aren't good for you. I do appreciate you liking and thumbs upping and tweety insta spacing and all that other crazy stuff. Do subscribe if you can, because that helps me pay for the channel. And as always, I do hope you watch the ad that runs after this, because that throws a few pennies in my pocket. Please do that if you have the time. I appreciate it. Thanks for watching. I'm Mr. Spork. These are Mr. Spork's hands. Now, I'm going to go make some cornbread. Oh, that video's up too. Check it out on the channel. Cheers. You dorks, get out of the Instant Pot.